The stars were cold and silent in this part of space. Nothing moved for millions of miles. The darkness stretched in every direction like a blanket that covered everything. It was the kind of place where ships got lost and never came back. But today, something new appeared on the sensors of the Veloran patrol fleet. Fleet Commander Torin sat in his large chair on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion. He was tall and broad, with gray skin and 4 eyes that could see in the dark. His people, the Velorans, had ruled this part of the galaxy for 300 years. They had conquered 47 worlds. They had crushed every enemy that stood against them. Torin had never known defeat, and he did not plan to learn what it felt like today. "Commander," said Subcommander Vesa, stepping forward. She was smaller than Torin, but just as dangerous. "Our sensors have found something strange. A ship, unknown design. It is drifting near the edge of our territory." Torin leaned forward in his chair, his 4 eyes narrowed with interest. "Show me." The main screen flickered to life. A small ship appeared in the center. It was tiny compared to the Veloran warships. Its hull was gray and simple. There were no large weapons visible, no heavy armor. It looked like something a child might build for fun. "What is that?" Torin asked with a laugh. "A toy." Analyst Kale stepped forward. He was the smartest officer on the ship, responsible for studying new species and threats. He looked at his data pad and shook his head slowly. "I do not recognize the design, Commander," Kale said. "It does not match any known species in our database. The technology appears basic, simple engines, minimal shields. I count only 5 life signs aboard." "5," Vesa repeated. "Just 5 crew members." "Yes, Subcommander. It seems to be some kind of exploration or survey vessel, not a warship." Torin smiled widely. This was going to be easy. A small ship with 5 crew members and no real weapons. They had wandered into Veloran space like lost animals. Perhaps they had something valuable on board. Perhaps their species would make good slaves. Either way, this was a gift. "Move the fleet into position," Torin ordered. "Surround them. I want no escape routes." The 12 Veloran warships moved like wolves circling a wounded deer. They spread out in a perfect formation, blocking every possible path. The small unknown ship sat in the center, completely trapped. On board that small ship, things were very different from what Torin imagined. Captain Tiho stood in the center of his bridge, looking at the star charts on his screen. He was a man of medium height with short black hair and calm eyes. He wore a simple gray uniform with a small Earth Command badge on his chest. He had been a captain for 15 years, and he had seen many strange things in the darkness of space. "Captain," said Lieutenant Yuna from her station. She was young but very skilled. Her job was communications, and she was the best at it. "We have company." Tiho looked up from his charts. "What kind of company?" "12 ships, sir. Alien design. They are surrounding us right now." Engineer Sung-ho whistled from his station at the back of the bridge. He was older than the others, with gray in his hair and grease on his hands. 12 against 1. That seems a bit unfair. Pilot Hana did not look worried. She sat at the front of the bridge, her hands resting on the controls. She was small and quiet, but she could fly a ship through an asteroid field with her eyes closed. "Should I prepare evasive maneuvers, Captain?" Tiho thought for a moment. He looked at the alien ships on his screen. They were big and covered with weapons. Any one of them could destroy the horizon's edge in seconds, but Tiho did not feel afraid. He had been in worse situations before. "No," he said calmly. "Let us see what they want first." Ensign Yi-won, the youngest member of the crew, looked nervous at his tactical station. "Sir, they are powering up their weapons." "Noted," Tiho said, "but they have not fired yet. Let us be polite and see if we can avoid a fight." At that moment, Yuna's console beeped. "They are hailing us, Captain. Should I put them through?" "Yes, on screen." The view screen changed. Fleet Commander Torin's face appeared, filling the screen with his gray skin and 4 angry eyes. He looked at T-Ho like a predator looking at prey. "Unknown vessel," Torin said in a deep voice. "You have entered Veloran space without permission. This is a crime punishable by death. However, I am feeling generous today. Surrender your ship and your crew, and I will let you live as servants of the Empire." T-Ho did not react. He did not flinch. He did not show any fear at all. He simply looked at the alien commander with the same calm expression he always wore. "I see," T-Ho said slowly. "That is an interesting offer." Torin was confused. He had expected fear. He had expected begging. He had expected the strange alien to fall to his knees and cry for mercy. But this human just stood there, looking at him like they were having a normal conversation. "You do not seem to understand your situation," Torin growled. "You are surrounded. You have no weapons. You have no chance. Surrender now." T-Ho nodded slightly. "I understand the situation very well, Commander, but I am afraid I cannot surrender this ship. It is the property of Earth Command, and I do not have the authority to give it away." "Earth Command," Torin repeated. He had never heard this name before. "What is Earth Command?" Behind him, Analyst Kale was already searching the database. He scrolled through thousands of species, empires, and organizations. Nothing. Earth Command did not exist in any Veloran record. "It is not in our database, Commander," Kale said quietly. "This species is unknown to us." Torin laughed. "Unknown means weak. Unknown means primitive. They probably just crawled out of their little planet and got lost in space." He looked back at T-Ho with cruel amusement. "Your Earth Command does not matter here. In Veloran space, we are the only command that matters." T-Ho remained calm. He even smiled a little. "I understand your position, Commander, but I think there may be some confusion. Perhaps we should contact my superiors and clear this up. Would you like to speak with Earth Command directly?" Vesa leaned close to Torin. "Commander, this could be a trick, a delay tactic." "Let him try," Torin said. "What can a primitive species do against 12 warships? Let us see who these Earth Command fools are." T-Ho turned to Yuna. "Lieutenant, please establish a connection with Sector 7 operations. Priority channel." "Yes, Captain." Yuna's fingers moved across her console. "Connecting now. It will take a moment." The bridge of the Dominion waited. Torin drummed his fingers on his chair. He was growing impatient. This was taking too long. He had ships to command and territories to patrol. He did not have time to play games with primitive aliens. "This is foolish," he muttered to Vesa. "After this call fails, we will board their ship and take what we want." Vesa nodded. "Of course, Commander. They cannot possibly have any real support out here. We are too far from any known civilization." On the horizon's edge, the crew waited quietly. Sung-Ho checked his engine readings. Hana kept her hands ready on the controls. Yi-Won watched the Veloran weapons with growing worry. But T-Ho just stood there, patient and calm, like a man waiting for a bus. "Connection established," Yuna announced. "Transferring to main channel now." T-Ho straightened his uniform. "Put them through, Lieutenant. Let us introduce our new friends to Earth Command." The screen flickered. Something changed. And in that moment, everything the Velorans believed about the universe was about to be destroyed. The screen flickered for 43 seconds. It felt like 43 years. On the bridge of the Dominion, Fleet Commander Torin grew more impatient with each passing moment. His 4 eyes stared at the small human ship on his screen. These primitives were wasting his time. They were probably just pretending to call someone important. It was a common trick used by desperate prey. "This is ridiculous," Torin said to Subcommander Vesa. "They are stalling. There is no one coming to help them. Prepare the boarding parties." Vesa nodded and turned to give the order. But before she could speak, something happened. The screen changed. A new face appeared. It was a human woman. She had black hair pulled back tight against her head. Her eyes were dark and cold like the void of space itself. She wore a black uniform with silver markings on the shoulders. Behind her was not a small ship. Behind her was something much bigger. The Veloran bridge crew froze. An entire operations center stretched out behind the woman. Dozens of humans sat at glowing consoles. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing maps of star systems, fleet movements, and data streams that flowed like rivers of light. Officers walked between stations, giving orders and checking reports. It was organized. It was efficient. It was massive. "This is Admiral Mira of Earth Command, Sector 7 Operations," the woman said. Her voice was calm but carried weight. It was the voice of someone who was used to being obeyed. "You have surrounded one of our survey vessels. State your intentions." Torin blinked all four of his eyes. He had expected a small room with maybe one or two frightened officers. He had expected begging. He had expected weakness. He had not expected this. Analyst Kale stared at his data pad. His hands were shaking slightly. He was trying to analyze what he was seeing on the screen. The technology in that room, the size of those displays, the number of fleet markers visible on their maps. This was not a primitive species. This was not a lost ship from a backwater world. "Commander," Kale whispered urgently. "Those displays behind her. I can see fleet markers, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They are spread across multiple star systems." Torin did not respond. He was still staring at the Admiral. "I asked you a question, Commander," Admiral Mira said. Her eyes did not blink. Her expression did not change. "What are your intentions regarding my people?" Torin found his voice. He was a proud Veloran. He had conquered worlds. He would not be frightened by a screen full of lights and a woman with cold eyes. "Your vessel has entered Veloran space," Torin said firmly. "Under our law it will be seized. The crew will be taken as prisoners. This is not negotiable." Admiral Mira tilted her head slightly. It was a small movement, but something about it made Vesa take a step back. "Your border claims are not recognized by the Terran Confederation," the Admiral said. "That vessel and its crew are protected under Earth Command jurisdiction. I strongly advise you to reconsider your position." "The Terran Confederation," Torin repeated. He had never heard this name. The Veloran Empire had ruled this region for 300 years. They knew every species, every government, every threat. How could something this large exist without their knowledge? "Kale," Torin hissed. "What is the Terran Confederation? Why is it not in our records?" Kale was sweating now. His fingers moved rapidly across his data pad. "I do not know, Commander. There is nothing. No records, no reports, no contact history. It is as if they appeared from nowhere." "That is impossible," Vesa said. "An organization this size cannot hide." On the horizon's edge, Captain Tiho watched the exchange with quiet interest. His crew remained at their stations, calm and professional. They had seen this scene play out before. Different aliens, different threats, but always the same result. The Velorans seemed confused. Engineer Sungho said quietly. "They always are," Pilot Hana replied with a small smile. "Nobody expects Earth Command." Lieutenant Yuna kept the communication channel stable. She had done this many times. First contact situations were tricky, but Earth Command had protocols for everything. "Stay calm. Let the Admiral talk. Do not show fear." Ensign Yiwan watched the Veloran weapons on his screen. They were still powered up, but nobody was firing. That was a good sign. It meant they were thinking instead of shooting. Back on the Dominion, Torin was trying to regain control of the situation. He straightened in his chair and put on his most threatening expression. "You think I fear one admiral on a screen," Torin said. "You think I am afraid of some pictures and lights. I have 12 warships here. Your little survey vessel has nothing. If you want to save your crew, you will order them to surrender." Admiral Mira did not look impressed. She did not look worried. She looked like someone who had heard this speech 1,000 times before. Commander Torin, she said, and his blood went cold when she used his name. He had not told her his name. How did she know his name? Yes, we know who you are, the Admiral continued, as if reading his thoughts. We have been monitoring your communication since your fleet moved to intercept our vessel. Standard protocol, nothing personal. Kale nearly dropped his data pad. They intercepted our communications. That is impossible. Our encryption is the best in the galaxy. Apparently not, Vesa muttered. Admiral Mira continued speaking. I understand that you are proud of your fleet, Commander. 12 ships is impressive by local standards, but I want to be very clear about something. That survey vessel you have surrounded, it is not alone. It has never been alone. Every ship in Earth Command is connected. Every crew is protected. When you threatened Captain T-Ho and his people, you did not threaten 5 humans on a small ship. You threatened the entire Terran Confederation. The bridge of the Dominion was silent. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. You are bluffing, Torin said, but his voice was not as strong as before. I do not bluff, Commander. I do not have time for games. Admiral Mira leaned slightly forward. Let me make this simple for you. That ship you want to seize, it is worth more than your entire fleet combined. Not because of its weapons or its cargo, but because of the 5 humans aboard. To Earth Command, every human life is valuable. We do not abandon our people. We do not negotiate with threats, and we do not forgive those who harm our own. Torin felt something strange in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it. Fear. He was actually feeling fear. This had not happened in decades. What do you want? He asked. I want you to make a choice, Admiral Mira said. You can back away from that ship and return to your territory. We will forget this happened. We will record it as a misunderstanding and move on. Or, she paused. The silence was terrible. Or you can continue with your plan. You can try to board that ship, and then you will learn what happens when you make an enemy of Earth Command. On the horizon's edge, Captain T-Ho cleared his throat. Admiral, if I may. Go ahead, Captain. Perhaps we should show our new friends something. Help them understand the situation better. Admiral Miran nodded slowly. A reasonable suggestion. Earth Command authorizes full identification broadcast. Captain T-Ho, activate your transponder beacon. Let them see who we really are. T-Ho turned to Ensign Yi-1. You heard the Admiral, light us up. Yi-1 grinned. His fingers moved across his console. Yes, sir. Activating transponder beacon now, full broadcast. The small survey ship began to transmit. A signal went out into space, pinging networks that the Velorans had never detected before. Data began to flow back. Information began to appear on screens across the Dominion. And that was when the Velorans truly began to understand how badly they had made a mistake. Analyst Kale stared at his console. Numbers were appearing, fleet registrations, colony records, population counts, military assets. The data kept coming faster and faster, flooding his screen with information that should not exist. His face went pale. His hands began to shake. Commander, he said, his voice barely a whisper, you need to see this. Torin looked at Kale's screen. His 4 eyes went wide. That cannot be right, he said. That cannot possibly be right. But it was right. Every number was real. Every figure was accurate. And the Veloran Empire, the conquerors of 47 worlds, the rulers of 1,000 stars, suddenly felt very, very small. The numbers would not stop coming. Analyst Kale stood at his station on the bridge of the Dominion, watching data pour across his screen like a flood. His training had prepared him for many things: enemy ships, strange aliens, unknown technologies, but nothing had prepared him for this. He read the first line out loud. His voice was shaking. Terran Confederation, total colony worlds, 2,847. The bridge went silent. Sub-Commander Vesa turned slowly to look at him. Her face had gone pale. What did you say? She asked. 847 colonies, Kale repeated. That is almost 60 times more than our entire empire. Fleet Commander Torin gripped the arms of his chair so hard that his knuckles turned white. He stared at the data on Kale's screen, trying to find some mistake. There had to be a mistake. This could not be real. Continue, Torin ordered. His voice was barely a whisper. Kale swallowed hard and kept reading. Active naval vessels registered to Earth Command, 14.6 million. Nobody spoke. Nobody could speak. The Veloran Empire had maybe 10,000 warships in total. They had been so proud of that number. It had made them feel invincible. 14 million ships. The number was too big to even imagine. Population across settled territories, Kale continued, his voice growing weaker with each word. 890 billion. Vesa grabbed a nearby console to steady herself. That is not possible. No species grows that fast. No civilization expands that quickly. There is more, Kale said. He did not want to keep reading, but he could not stop. First contact protocol status, active. They have protocols for meeting new species, detailed procedures. It says here that Earth Command has made contact with over 400 different alien civilizations. 400, Torin repeated. We have only encountered a few dozen in 300 years of expansion. Yes, Commander. Kale paused at the next line. His hands were trembling badly now. There is a threat assessment calculation running. It is analyzing our fleet. On the main screen, Admiral Mira watched with cold patience. She had not moved. She had not spoken. She was just waiting, letting the information do its work. The threat assessment finished calculating. Kale read it out loud, though every word felt like a knife in his chest. Veloran Patrol Fleet, 12 vessels. Combined firepower, minimal. Estimated response time for nearest Earth Command Rapid Deployment Fleet, 11 minutes. Threat level assessment, negligible. Negligible. They were negligible. 12 warships of the mighty Veloran Empire, and the humans considered them barely worth noticing. Captain Tiho watched the Veloran commander's face on his screen. He had seen that expression before. It was the look of someone whose entire understanding of the universe was being torn apart. They are taking it hard, Lieutenant Yuna observed quietly. They always do, Tiho replied. Imagine thinking you were the biggest fish in the ocean, and then suddenly meeting a whale. Pilot Hana checked her navigation console. Actually, Captain, the nearest rapid deployment fleet is only 8 minutes away, not 11. The Admiral is being generous. Engineer Sung-ho laughed softly. She probably wants to give them time to think. Better they surrender than force us to actually call for backup. The paperwork for armed engagements is terrible. On the Dominion, Torin was struggling to process everything he had learned. His mind kept going back to the small survey ship sitting in the middle of his fleet. 5 crew members, basic weapons, simple shields. He had thought they were helpless. He had thought they were prey. But they were never helpless. They were never alone. They were connected to something so vast that it made the Veloran Empire look like a single grain of sand on an endless beach. Commander, Vesa said urgently, we need to reconsider our approach. Be quiet, Torin snapped. I am thinking. With respect, Commander, there is nothing to think about. Look at these numbers. Look at what we are facing. If we attack that ship, we will be destroyed. Not just this fleet, the entire empire. Analyst Kale added more information. Commander, their database includes historical records. I am seeing references to wars they have fought, entire species that opposed them. Some were conquered. Some were absorbed into the Confederation peacefully. And some. He stopped reading. Some what? Torin demanded. Kale looked at his commander with fear in his eyes. Some no longer exist, Commander. They were erased. Every planet, every colony, every member of the species, gone. The humans did not even consider it a major conflict. They called it a border dispute. The bridge was silent again. The weight of those words pressed down on everyone like a physical force. Admiral Mira finally spoke again. Her voice cut through the silence like a blade. I hope this information has been helpful, Commander Torin. I want you to understand exactly what you are dealing with. We are not your enemy. We do not want to be your enemy. The Terran Confederation has no interest in your empire or your territory. We have more than enough space for our needs. She paused, and her eyes seemed to look directly into Torin's soul. But Captain T-Ho and his crew are our people. They are protected. If you harm them, there will be consequences. Not threats, not warnings, consequences. Am I being clear? Torin wanted to argue. He wanted to show strength. He was a commander of the Veloran Empire. He had never surrendered. He had never backed down. But then he looked at the numbers again. 14 million ships, almost 3,000 colonies, 800 billion people. His 12 warships were nothing. His empire was nothing. Everything he had believed about his place in the galaxy was a lie. How long have you existed? Torin asked suddenly. It was not the question he had planned to ask, but it came out anyway. Admiral Mira tilted her head slightly. Humans have been traveling among the stars for approximately 600 years. The Terran Confederation was formed about 400 years ago. 600 years, Kale whispered. They have expanded this much in only 600 years. Humans are very efficient, Admiral Mira said. There was no pride in her voice. She was simply stating a fact. We also have a high survival drive. Our homeworld was dangerous. We learned early that adapting and expanding was the only way to ensure our species would continue. Captain T-Ho spoke up from his ship. Admiral, I believe Commander Torin is beginning to understand the situation. Perhaps we can discuss a peaceful resolution. Admiral Mira nodded. An excellent suggestion, Captain. She looked at Torin again. Commander, I am a reasonable person. I do not enjoy conflict. It wastes resources and creates unnecessary problems. I would much prefer to end this encounter peacefully. Torin found his voice. What do you propose? Simple, withdraw your fleet. Return to your territory. We will record this as a misunderstanding between two civilizations meeting for the first time. No hostility, no consequences, just a moment of confusion that was resolved through communication. And if we refuse? Admiral Mira did not answer immediately. She looked at something off-screen, nodded slightly, then turned back to face Torin. I have just received confirmation that the 4th Rapid Response Fleet has altered course to this sector. They were on a routine patrol nearby. Current distance, approximately 7 minutes at full speed. Fleet composition, 42 vessels including 3 heavy carriers. 42 ships, 3 carriers, and they were only 7 minutes away. Vesa moved close to Torin and spoke quietly. Commander, we cannot win this fight. We cannot even survive this fight. Please, think of our crews, think of their families. Torin looked at the small human ship on his screen. 5 people. That was all. 5 people in a tiny vessel with almost no weapons. And behind them stood an empire that made the Velorans look like children playing with toys. For the first time in his life, Fleet Commander Torin understood what it meant to be truly outmatched. Not just in this battle, not just in this moment, but in every possible way. He had wanted to capture a helpless ship. Instead, he had awakened something vast and ancient and terrifyingly patient. The question now was simple. Would he be smart enough to walk away? The bridge of the Dominion had never been so quiet. Fleet Commander Torin sat in his chair, unmoving. His 4 eyes stared at the screen where Admiral Mira waited with perfect patience. Behind him, his crew stood frozen at their stations. No one typed on their consoles. No one whispered to their neighbor. They all understood what was happening. They all knew the truth now. The Veloran Empire was not the most powerful force in the galaxy. They were not even close. Sub-Commander Vesa stood at Torin's side, waiting for orders. She had served under him for 15 years. She had followed him into countless battles. She had watched him destroy enemies without mercy or hesitation. But this was different. This enemy could not be destroyed. Analyst Kale continued to study the data flowing into his console. Each new piece of information made things worse. He found records of human military technology. Their weapons were more advanced. Their shields were stronger. Their ships were faster. Even the small survey vessel they had surrounded was more sophisticated than it appeared. "Commander," Kale said quietly, "I found something else." Torin did not turn to look at him. "What?" "The vessel we surrounded, the horizon's edge. I scanned it again with our best sensors." Kale paused, fear clear in his voice. "It has systems we did not detect before, hidden systems, including a distress beacon that has been transmitting since we first surrounded them." Vesa closed her eyes. "They called for help the moment they saw us." "Yes, the beacon was automatic. Standard protocol for Earth command vessels when contacted by unknown forces." Kale looked at his screen again. "The fourth rapid response fleet we were told about. They were probably already on their way before the Admiral even answered our call." Torin finally moved. He turned his head slowly to look at Kale. "Are you telling me that everything we have done since finding that ship has been watched and recorded?" "Yes, Commander. Earth Command has complete information about this encounter. Our ship names, our fleet composition, our weapons, our communications, everything." On the horizon's edge, Captain Tiho listened to this exchange through the open communication channel. He felt a small amount of sympathy for the Velorans. They had made a mistake, but they had not known better. First contact situations were always difficult. "Captain," Lieutenant Yuna said softly, "the Admiral is signaling. She wants to know if you have any recommendations." Tiho thought for a moment. The Velorans were clearly struggling to accept reality. Their commander looked like a man whose entire world had just collapsed. Sometimes, in these situations, a gentle push was more effective than a hard one. "Tell the Admiral I recommend we give them more time," Tiho said. "They are processing a lot of information. Pushing them too hard might cause them to make a desperate decision." Yuna relayed the message. On the screen, Admiral Mira nodded slightly. Back on the Dominion, Torin was fighting an internal war. His pride screamed at him to attack, to show strength, to prove that the Veloran Empire was not afraid of anyone. But his survival instinct was louder. It told him that pride was useless if he was dead. "Commander," Vesa said carefully, "may I speak freely?" "Yes." "We have two choices. We can fight and die, or we can retreat and live." She paused. "If we fight, we accomplish nothing. Our fleet will be destroyed in minutes. Our crews will die. And the Empire will lose 12 ships without gaining anything in return." "But if we retreat," Torin said bitterly, "we show weakness. We admit that we are inferior." "Commander," Vesa moved closer and lowered her voice so only he could hear, "we are inferior. That is not an insult. It is a fact. Look at the numbers. Look at their technology. Look at their response time. They have been watching us like we watch insects. They let us surround their ship because they knew we could not hurt them." Torin's hands clenched into fists. He wanted to deny it. He wanted to believe that the Veloran Empire could stand against anyone. But the truth was right in front of him, impossible to ignore. Admiral Mira spoke again. Her voice was calm and measured. "Commander Torin, I want to help you make the right decision. I understand that this is difficult. You believed you were in a position of power. You believed you were dealing with a weaker opponent. That belief has been proven wrong. I know how painful that is." She paused, and something almost like understanding appeared in her eyes. "But here is what I also know. You are a military commander. Your duty is to your crews and to your empire. Every officer on your ships has a family waiting for them to come home. They trusted you to lead them wisely. Is your pride worth their lives?" The question hit Torin like a physical blow. He thought about his crew. He thought about the young officers who looked up to him. He thought about the families on the homeworld who were waiting for news. Vesa pressed her advantage. Commander, there is no shame in recognizing a superior force. The greatest generals in our history knew when to fight and when to withdraw. This is one of those times. Analyst Kale added quietly, Commander, I found something else in the human records. A phrase from their ancient military history. They call it strategic wisdom. What phrase? Torin asked. Kale read from his screen. He who knows when he can fight and when he cannot will be victorious. Torin closed his eyes. He sat in silence for a long moment. The weight of the decision pressed down on him like the gravity of a planet. On the horizon's edge, the crew waited. What do you think he will do? Ensign Yiwan asked nervously. Engineer Sung-ho shrugged. Hard to say. Some commanders let pride destroy them. Others are smart enough to walk away. Pilot Hana kept her hands ready on the controls. If they attack, I can get us clear in 4 seconds. Hopefully it will not come to that, Captain Tiho said. He watched Torin's face on the screen, looking for any sign of his decision. Finally, Torin opened his eyes. He looked at Admiral Mira with a strange expression. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was something like respect mixed with exhaustion. Admiral, he said slowly, I have questions. Ask them. If we retreat, what happens next? Does your Confederation hunt us down? Do you invade our territory? Do you seek revenge for this insult? Admiral Mira shook her head. No, Commander. We do not operate that way. If you withdraw peacefully, this incident is closed. Earth Command has no interest in your empire. We have enough territory and enough concerns without adding yours to the list. You would simply let us go, after we threatened your people. You threatened. You did not act. There is a difference. The Admiral's voice softened slightly. Commander, we are not conquerors. We are not looking for enemies. We are explorers and builders and, when necessary, defenders. You made a mistake today, but mistakes can be forgiven if they are not repeated. Torin looked at Vesa. He looked at Kale. He looked at the faces of his bridge crew, all of them watching him with desperate hope. He thought about his empire. 300 years of expansion, 47 conquered worlds, thousands of ships built, millions of soldiers trained. All of it meant nothing against what he had seen today. But it was still his empire. It was still his home. And if he made the wrong choice now, there would be nothing left to protect. Admiral Mira, Torin said. His voice was heavy, but it was steady. I will withdraw my fleet. A wave of relief swept through the bridge of the Dominion. Officers exhaled. Shoulders relaxed. Vesa closed her eyes and whispered a silent prayer of thanks. A wise decision, Commander, Admiral Mira said. I mean that sincerely. It takes courage to recognize when a situation has changed. Torin nodded slowly. One more question, Admiral. Yes. How did we never find you? How did an empire as large as yours remain hidden from us for so long? Admiral Mira almost smiled. It was a small expression, barely visible, but it was there. We were not hiding, Commander. We simply never had a reason to introduce ourselves. Your empire is small, localized. You never ventured far enough to encounter us. She paused. Until today, you were not important enough to notice. The words should have been insulting. They should have made Torin angry. But instead, they just made him tired. Very, very tired. I understand, he said quietly. We will leave now. Safe travels, Commander. I hope our next encounter, if there is one, will be under better circumstances. The screen flickered and Admiral Mira disappeared. In her place was just the image of the small survey ship, sitting peacefully in the middle of the Veloran fleet. Torin looked at it for a long moment. Then he gave the order. All ships reverse course. We are returning to Veloran space immediately. The fleet began to move. One by one, the 12 warships turned away from the horizon's edge and entered hyperspace. In less than a minute they were gone. The stars were quiet again. The darkness stretched out in every direction. And the small human ship sat alone in the void, exactly where it had been before. Nothing had changed for them. Nothing except a minor delay in their survey mission. Captain Tiho leaned back in his chair and smiled. "Well," he said, "that was interesting. Yuna, send a report to Sector 7. Tell them first contact was successful. No casualties. Recommend we add the Veloran Empire to the monitoring list." "Yes, Captain," Yuna began typing. "Anything else?" "Yes, tell them we are continuing our survey mission. We should reach the next sector in about 6 hours." The horizon's edge powered up its engines and moved forward into the darkness. Just another day, just another mission, just another species that had learned the truth about humanity. The galaxy was vast, and somewhere in that vastness, the humans had built something incredible, something patient, something watchful, something that did not need to prove its strength because its strength was beyond question. And the Velorans had been lucky enough to walk away from that truth, with their lives intact. 3 days had passed since the encounter. Fleet Commander Torin stood in the great hall of the Veloran High Council. It was a massive room, built to inspire fear and respect. Giant pillars of black stone reached toward a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadows. The floor was polished metal that reflected the faces of the council members sitting on their elevated thrones. There were 7 members of the High Council. They ruled the Veloran Empire together, making decisions that affected billions of lives across 47 worlds. They were the most powerful beings in their civilization. Today they looked scared. High Chancellor Varrock sat in the center throne. He was old, with deep lines on his gray face and eyes that had seen many things. He had led the empire through wars and crises. He had always found a way to victory. But now, as he listened to Torin's report, he felt something he had not experienced in decades. Doubt. "Let me understand this correctly," Varrock said slowly. "You encountered a single ship with 5 crew members. You surrounded it with 12 warships, and then you retreated without firing a shot." Torin stood straight and tall. He would not show weakness even though he knew how bad this looked. "Yes, High Chancellor." "And your reason for this retreat was a transmission from an organization called Earth Command." "Yes, High Chancellor." The other council members exchanged glances. One of them, a military commander named Rel, leaned forward with anger in his eyes. "This is disgraceful," Rel said. "The Veloran Empire does not retreat from anyone. We have conquered 47 worlds. We have crushed every enemy who stood against us. And you ran away from a recording." "It was not a recording," Torin said calmly. "It was a live transmission from a command center larger than any I have ever seen, and the information they shared was not a bluff." He pulled out a data pad and activated a holographic display in the center of the room. Numbers and images filled the air. Star maps, fleet registrations, population counts, all the data that Earth Command had shared during the encounter. The council members stared at the display with growing horror. "This cannot be accurate," said another council member, a woman named Sira who handled economic affairs. "Almost 3,000 colony worlds, 14 million ships, that is impossible." "I thought the same thing," Torin admitted. "So did Analyst Kale. We spent the entire journey home trying to find errors in the data. We could not find any. Every number is consistent. Every figure matches internal calculations." High Chancellor Varrock rose from his throne and walked toward the holographic display. He moved through the data, examining each piece carefully. His face grew more troubled with each passing moment. 600 years, he said quietly. "They have been expanding for only 600 years, and they have achieved this." "Yes, High Chancellor. According to their records, humans evolved on a single planet called Earth. They developed space travel approximately 600 years ago. Since then, They have expanded across thousands of systems. How? Sira demanded. How does any species grow this fast? Torin had spent many hours thinking about this question. He had reviewed the historical data that Earth Command had shared. He had studied human biology and psychology, and he had reached a conclusion that frightened him deeply. Humans are different from us, Torin explained. Their homeworld was harsh, dangerous. They faced extinction many times before they even reached the stars. This made them driven. They expand because they believe they must. They adapt because they have no choice. And they fight when threatened because survival is in their nature. All species fight when threatened, Rel said dismissively. Not like humans. Torin pulled up another section of data. Look at their military history. They have fought dozens of wars against other species. They have never lost. Not once. Some enemies were conquered, some were absorbed peacefully, and some were completely destroyed. The room fell silent. The council members stared at the records of species that no longer existed, names they had never heard, civilizations that had been wiped from the galaxy because they had made the mistake of threatening humanity. They could destroy us, Varrock said softly. It was not a question. If they wanted to, they could destroy our entire empire. Yes, High Chancellor. In a matter of days, probably. Their nearest response fleet was only minutes away from my position. If I had attacked that survey ship, my fleet would have been destroyed before we could even send a distress signal. Council member Rel looked like he wanted to argue, but the evidence was too clear. Even his pride could not overcome the truth of the numbers. Why did they let you go? Sira asked. If they are so powerful, why show mercy? Torin remembered Admiral Mira's face, her cold eyes, her calm voice, the way she had handled the situation without ever showing anger or emotion. The Admiral told me they are not conquerors, Torin said. They do not seek enemies. They do not want our territory. They have enough of their own. He paused. I believe she was telling the truth. They let us go because we were not important enough to destroy. Those words hurt to say, but they were accurate. The Veloran Empire, with all its power and glory, was not even worth conquering in human eyes. Subcommander Vessa and Analyst Kale had accompanied Torin to the council chambers. They stood behind him, witnesses to everything that had happened. Now Kale stepped forward and added one more piece of information. High Chancellor, during the encounter, I found a phrase in the human historical records. It seemed to explain their approach to situations like ours. What phrase? Varrock asked. Kale cleared his throat. The translation is approximate, but it says, "Speak softly and carry a big stick." The council members looked confused. Varrock frowned. What does that mean? It means they do not threaten, they do not boast, they do not make loud declarations of power. Kale looked around the room at the great pillars and high thrones, all designed to intimidate visitors. They simply have the power and they use it when necessary. The small ship we encountered, that was them speaking softly. The fleets and colonies and billions of humans behind it, that was the big stick. Silence filled the great hall. The weight of understanding pressed down on everyone present. The Veloran Empire had built itself on strength and conquest. They announced their power loudly. They demanded respect through fear. The humans did none of that. They did not need to. Their power was so vast that they did not care if others knew about it or not. High Chancellor Varrock returned to his throne and sat down heavily. He looked older than he had at the start of this meeting. The weight of this new reality was crushing. What do we do? Sira asked. How do we respond to this? Varrock thought for a long moment. He looked at the data still floating in the air. He looked at the faces of his council members. He looked at Torin, who had been brave enough to retreat and smart enough to survive. We do nothing, Varrock finally said. Nothing, Rel exclaimed. We cannot simply do nothing. What would you have us do? Varrock's voice was tired. Declare war, attack them, challenge an empire that has thousands of times our strength. He shook his head. No, we do nothing, we stay quiet. We remain within our borders, and we hope that they continue to consider us unimportant. The council chamber was silent. No one argued, no one complained, they all understood. For 300 years, the Veloran Empire had been the dominant power in their region of space. They had believed they were special, destined for greatness, meant to rule. Now they knew the truth. They were a small fish in an ocean they had never explored. And somewhere in that ocean, something massive was swimming, something patient, something that barely noticed them. Torin spoke one last time. High Chancellor, what should I tell my crews? What should they say to their families about what happened? Varrock considered the question. Then he looked at Torin with eyes that had lost their fire. Tell them the truth, Varrock said. Tell them we met the humans. Tell them the humans were peaceful. Tell them we came home safely because we chose wisdom over pride. He paused. And tell them to pray that we never give the humans a reason to remember our name. The meeting ended. The council members left the great hall one by one, each lost in their own thoughts. Torin walked out into the light of the Veloran sun, feeling the warmth on his gray skin. He thought about the small human ship. He thought about Captain Tiho, standing calmly on his bridge while surrounded by 12 warships. He thought about the complete lack of fear in the man's eyes. Now Torin understood why there had been no fear. When you were protected by an empire that vast, what was there to be afraid of? Far away across the darkness of space, the horizon's edge continued its survey mission. Captain Tiho filed his report, logged the first contact, and moved on to the next star system. For him and his crew, the encounter with the Velorans was just another day, just another species learning the truth. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders. Humanity had made it their home, and anyone who threatened them would discover what that really meant. But if they were smart, like the Velorans, they would learn that lesson without paying the ultimate price. The stars continued to shine. The darkness continued to spread between them. And somewhere in that infinite space, humanity kept building, kept exploring, kept growing. Softly, patiently, carrying their very big stick.